now we're going to go into preparing before your due date. So we talked about what your body does and what baby does as you're preparing for birth. Let's look at what we can do. So we talked about exercise. We talked about nutrition. Other things to think about, which we kind of were talking on break, is where to have your baby, your care provider. So when you're thinking about that, what are some things to kind of consider? Do you have any input on that? Like when you're thinking where to have baby, who's going to be the midwife, who's going to be the doctor, what are some things to consider in that?
Probably my biggest thing was what my husband's comfortable with. Just because at that time, I don't know how he would be now, but at that time he would have been he was the most comfortable. So it was like having a hospital birth, so it wasn't even an option for me. Like I just was like, if that's what he's comfortable with, that's what I want to do. So I think that would be a huge thing.
Yeah.
And also distance. You're a fast laborer.
Yes.
Which I'm not, so that worked out. We drove the whole way from Churchtown to Women and Babies, and we still had plenty of hours.
Yes, those are all very good. So kind of when you're thinking of it, you want to make sure that whoever you decide to go with, that they are like integrated. So what you want, like they are, like they're with you on that. Like they're not going to fight for what, like the way you want to labor, the way you decide to birth. If you want to educate yourself more on that, there's a really good book, and it's called The Thinking Woman's Guide to a Better Birth. It will lay it out for you, like what for training a doctor goes through, because that will help you understand how they see birth. What for training a midwife goes through. That will kind of clue you in as to how are they going to handle when you go into labor, you know, because they're probably going to handle that differently. So that's like a really unbiased opinion on places to birth. So if you want to get more educated, it is called The Thinking Woman's Guide to a Better Birth. The Thinking Woman's Guide. The Thinking Woman's Guide to a Better Birth. And that's a really good, it's very, like it just kind of tells you, just kind of lays it out for you, and it's a really good read. So that, definitely recommend that book.
It would probably be too late to change your mind anyway.
Well, I have had a lot of women think, oh, once I'm with the care provider, I stay with that care provider. I would say if you do not feel comfortable with that care provider, look into what other options you have. I know of a mom that changed in the last month of pregnancy. And I said, did you regret it? She said, no, I did not. Because where she was currently, she felt like they just were too unconcerned about one of the problems she was having. And she did not feel comfortable with that. So she's like, okay, I need to check in other options. It's something you don't want to, I mean, if you realize that the sooner the better, you know, to change. But if you have to, find somebody that you feel really comfortable with.
There was somebody that I heard that was trying to change because they were moving or changing their birthing plan. I'm not sure what it was. And they wouldn't let her, was that 3 months before, something like that. They weren't taking any new bonds or something. I think she might have been trying to switch to women's and babies.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, and then if you do want to change, just kind of ask them, like, how do they see birth? You know, what's their cesarean rates? What are their epidural rates? So just kind of, you know, find out, see how they look at birth, see how they view birth. So a lot of times going into pregnancy, a lot of moms are like, I have a fear. I have a fear of the pain that I'm going to experience. I have anxiety of what's going to happen, what's going to, like what's this labor going to be. So I want you to talk to me and tell me what are some things that we can do. So starting now, wherever you are in your pregnancy, what are some things you can start doing now with that fear, with that anxiety? Like what are some things to kind of combat that?
Pray.
Absolutely. Any good ideas, Darlene?
I think turning on some soothing music, like maybe some praise and worship or something, just to get your mind off of it.
Absolutely.
I would do it over, I would definitely pray more and
Mm-hmm.
listen to praise and worship more.
Uh-huh.
On
And scripture verses.
And
Yes.
scripture verses, yes. So kind of just like, I think a lot of times what I recommend to moms is just like start journaling about it. Talk to somebody, talk to your spouse, talk to a friend, talk to somebody that you trust, and just be like, look, this is the things that I'm dealing with. This is what is causing fear. This is what is causing anxiety. Sometimes just journaling about it kind of helps you like categorize kind of what you're feeling, and just kind of brings like, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. Like kind of recognize what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what you're against. And definitely pray about it. Definitely. And this was a really neat idea. I was listening to a podcast, and the mom had her friends had a baby shower for her, and she was just like, okay, God, going into this pregnancy, she was kind of dealing with that. It was her third baby, but she was dealing with a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, like, how's this all going to work out, with care for the children while she's in labor, and just everything. She's having a lot of anxiety, and she's like, hey, God, give me some verses. Tell me some verses. And so God gave her like 4 scripture verses, and so what she did at her baby shower, she got like a poster board, and she got her friends to help her write these Bible verses nicely and kind of decorate it a little bit, and then she posted them on her 4-bedroom wall, so she was laboring at home. That way, the scripture verse was like, it was like a focal point for her, and when she was in labor, she would either have her husband read it to her, or she'd just read it to herself, just to kind of have those were like her scripture verses. And so we said journal about it, pray about it, worship music, all of that, absolutely. But even taking it a step farther, I would say just seek God's heart on it. Be like, okay, God, this pregnancy, what do you see for me? What do you have in store? And ask God for like a Bible verse. Because I've had many moms that they were like going into it, they're like, okay, God, one mom just recently, she was really, really dealing with a lot of anxiety over birth, and she had a young one, and she was just like, hey God, I need at least a word or a verse. And God gave her the words was, my grace is going to show up. My grace is going to be sufficient for you. And honestly, the way her birth and everything went, she felt like she wasn't, did not turn out the way she pictured birth to be, but God's grace was sufficient and God's grace showed up. So I just encourage moms, just seek God's heart. Just take time and just soak in His presence. Be like, okay, God, what are some verses you have for me? What's your word for this pregnancy? How do you see it? And just kind of seek His heart on that. So I really encourage moms to do that. And just on a little side note, I guess I get really passionate about this because when we were driving into the hospital to have Olivia, we were like, okay, God, we need something. We want a verse. We're like, is that too much to ask? And so we didn't even have our Bible with. One of the little kids had like a little New Testament with them, and God gave us the verse, Romans 8:11. And so we just come to that verse, and a couple days after we got home from the hospital, I was like journaling about the birth and everything, and I was like, honey, what was the scripture reference to that? And he's like, oh, it was Romans 8:11, and I'm like, it was what? Her birth weight was 8 pounds 11 ounces. So it's just kind of like God's little stamp of saying, you know what, I have this. God just delights. Children are precious in His sight. So I think if we just kind of just soak in God's presence and just really get what is on His heart for this pregnancy, what does He have? So I just a little side note on that. I just encourage moms to do that, and just another thing we can do, kind of just changing gears here a little bit, is chiropractic care. Like that is if you're having a lot of pain or anything, or just kind of helps keep everything in alignment. So that we do, and that is make sure they know the Webster technique. Yeah.
That's a good. Back to what you were talking about before. I feel like that's the big thing that's different with this one. Like I feel like with Adelie, I know with Adelie, I don't know about Grayson as much, but like I would have had a birth dream, or like something that I was really praying for.
Mm-hmm.
So when I felt like it didn't happen that way. I was dealing with a lot of disappointment.
Mhm.
And I'm like,
Mhm.
this time around, I'm like, God, just prepare me for whatever. Like,
Yeah.
this is your baby. I would do your
Mhm.
plan. Prepare me
Mhm.
for whatever I
Yeah.
no expectations for it.
Yeah.
So the last thing I want to do is come out the other end disappointed that it didn't go
Mhm.
the way I
Yeah.
planned it to.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I'm not wanting to.
And I think sometimes, especially with moms, like after the first pregnancy, we kind of mentally be like, oh, so we had baby number 1, so baby number 2 is kind of going to be the same, and it's kind of probably, hopefully, go faster. So
With
some-
Natalie,
Yeah.
we were on the charismatic thing,
Uh-huh.
and we wanted a supernatural childbirth.
Mhm.
So we wanted a pain-free, and we had people praying and claiming Bible verses. It was the easiest birth I had. Like, why couldn't I be happy with that, right?
Mhm.
It wasn't pain-free. So, yeah.
Yeah. So did you think that made a difference then going into it with Grayson? Like, how was that?
Grayson, I don't think I did any preparing for birth.
Okay.
I don't think. I was so stressed, busy, distracted, whatever else.
Mhm. Mhm.
And,
Yeah. Yeah.
so.
Yeah, because sometimes we have to kind of let our minds get out of the way, because sometimes with moms, like, it's like, okay, birth 1 went this way, so we think birth 2 is going to go this way. And sometimes it's just letting go of that and being like, you know what, this baby's going to write its own birth story. This baby may not be anything, this birth story may not be anything like its siblings. So just kind of letting each baby have its own birth story and yeah, not expecting it to be like the one before that. So another thing is preparing is, we talked about a little bit, like the concentration, the relaxation. So breathing, we're going to talk more about that later, but words, sometimes there's a word that'll like help you, or words, reading the scripture, a mental picture. There was a lady that she worked with flowers, so to her it was just kind of like releasing herself and just letting herself just open up like a flower. That was her mental picture that left her relaxed. An object in the room, like we said, the scripture verses on the wall or something like that. Just getting things, just kind of helping yourself prepare for that. Making a birth plan. So what should that look like? So to make a birth plan, what you want to do is kind of, first of all, let them know, like, okay, who you want in the room with you. What do you want? Do you want dim lights? Do you want soft music playing? Do you want, when the baby's born, do you want skin to skin? Just kind of letting them, in a simple way, know what your wishes are for the birth. And what for pain medications you're good with, or what for pain medications that you want to make sure. Just kind of cluing in the nurses and the midwife or doctor as to what your preferences are. Keeping it simple, easy to read is key. Packing the bags for the hospital. What do you guys think about that? Tell me some things to pack. Or for the birth care, or if you're having it at home.
If you're having it at home.
I was going to say, having it at home, you want to have your stuff close by, that it's easy accessible, and talk with your midwife if she wants to have, you know, if everything's looking good. She probably doesn't need you to have a bag packed, you know, just in case being transferred, but talk to your midwife about that. So what are some things, like I said, if it's at home, easy access, or if you're going to the hospital, what are some things to consider packing?
Clean outfit for you to come home in.
Yes.
Pajamas for
So-
there, I think.
Yeah, and
Right.
something pretty for when you leave the hospital, because I don't feel real pretty about myself after I have a baby and have a cry.
That's a good
So
idea.
pretty
Nice
outfit,
outfit.
something that
And
you
make
really
sure
feel
it's
good in.
I
It's
always
comfy
would get
too.
myself like a new PJs, like
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
enough to like wear home in.
That's a good idea. That's very
And a
good.
rolling pin, that's one thing we never went without.
Why?
Because I had back labor with all my babies.
Oh,
So
and
Lee would take the rolling pin and he would just
Oh,
roll
wow.
my back. It felt so good.
Aw, that's neat.
Never
Never heard of that, but that's something you can take a look at, especially if you know you have back pain. And one thing, clean clothing, dad should also have a pair of clean clothing because many times you're helping mom in the shower, if she's laboring in the shower, in the jacuzzi, most times the dad ends up sopping wet. And so take at least a couple extra sets of clothing. And shoes.
He would always go home soon after, right? Because it was so close. Go home, shower,
there you
change,
go.
get a bite to eat, come back in or something.
Yeah. And, yeah, it kind of depends where you're birthing. Know if you need to take food, like if you go to birth care, make sure you have food with, or if you go to the hospital, know what food is around, and think about it too if you're in the middle of the night. Your phone and your charger, and if you want your camera, or if you just want to use nowadays just use your phone, they take amazing pictures. For mom, bathrobe, if you want your own socks, and like your own slippers, if you're needing to walk the hallways or something like that you're comfortable. Toothbrush and toothpaste for both because moms do not like smelly breath and their smell is very sensitive over that time.
So now brush your teeth.
Brush your teeth. Mints and gum. And don't forget, a lot of moms forget their chapstick. And because you're breathing and sometimes hospital air is dry, so you definitely want to remember chapstick. And a hair tie. So, is there anything else? Oh, unsweetened fruit juice. And if you try it now, but if you like pure coconut water, that's very good for when you're in labor because it like, helps energize you. So I would say try it now. Make sure you.
I use it for smoothies. I can't say that I've ever tried to drink
I
it.
was gonna say try it. See if you like that.
Coconut water, not milk.
Pure coconut water.
I think I got it on sale somewhere, and then I was like, oh, this looks good. And then I used it up on smoothies. Because I tend to not to smoke in smoothies.
Yeah, so those are just some things as you're getting ready. Also, journal. Journal about wishes for your baby. You know, journal talking to your baby before baby's born. Journal and write letters to your dad. What do you, just kind of how you appreciate him, how you're excited about the new baby coming. And write what you're grateful for in the pregnancy and just in life. Kind of gives you a good outlook on pregnancy. And we really encourage parents to go on a baby room. Before baby comes, get away, get some time away, go do something together because it is an adjustment adding a baby to the family. So go, take some time away, enjoy each other. What are some supplies that you're going to need before a baby arrives? Darlene, you can probably name them all.
What are some supplies you need?
Like in other words, what are some of the essentials? Like, what do you need?
An outfit for baby.
Yeah, an outfit to bring baby home and
Are we talking about the hospital or at home?
well, kind of both. Yeah.
If you're,
Diapers.
yeah, diapers if you're
Wipes.
gonna have it at home. Or brush
Yeah,
your
and diapers, there's so many options. There's the disposable and there's
Yes.
many brands, and then there's cloth and there's many brands. So
Mhm.
you've got your options, like a lot of options. So yeah, check that out.
Blankets.
And blankets.
Mhm.
And
Car
with,
seat.
yes, and car
If you're-
seat.
If you're
Well, either way, you need a car
You
seat.
don't need a car seat. And clothing, they say like normally baby's comfortable in like one more layer than what you're wearing. So just kind of to keep that in mind. And a safe place for baby to sleep. There's many options out there, so check them out to kind of decide where you want baby. So now, before we close, so when you're in labor, it's pretty intense. You have a lot happening, and we're trying to train ourselves to relax. So draw a parallel. So when you're in class, you get like a lot of information thrown at you. So what we're going to do is practice taking a nice deep breath and relaxing. So what we're going to do, Olivia, you can actually pause the movie now because we're going to turn off